Hey guys, so welcome back to the Knitting Expat podcast channel. I am here today with a special video for you guys. It is a Q&A. So I thought that I would do a fun little Q&A. I had a couple of questions for you guys and I thought I would ask and see what you guys wanted to know. It's been a while since I've done a Q&A, so I thought that'd be quite fun. First off, a little bit of administration. My name is Mina and you can find me online as Knitting Expat on Instagram, Mina Phillip on Ravelry. You can find links down below this video to show notes for podcasts, to the Ravelry group for this channel, to my Ravelry shop where I sell the knitting patterns that I design, and to a couple of other things. They're all linked down below if you're interested in checking those out. And another thing was a few weeks ago now, I posted a prize winners video. Two of the prize winners still haven't gotten in touch with me. It was for the Cozy Sock Club. It was number 136 Memis and number 196 Sussex Yorkie. So please, if you two can get in touch with me as soon as possible, I can get this prize out to you. The other prize winners, I have received your messages, I have packaged up your prizes. I literally have not had a chance to go to the post office yet. So those will be going out next week. And if I don't hear from the existing winners who haven't gotten in touch with me by the next time I record a podcast, which hopefully will be next week, then I will just redraw winners because it's been long enough, I think. All right, so let's dive in. The questions that I have for you guys are based around some new design ideas that I have that I'm working on, or not working on yet, but I want to work on. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts on it because I basically have 4 different ideas that I potentially want to explore. Some of them may overlap, but I don't obviously have time to do all of them, and I want to focus on the ones that you guys are the most interested in. So I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions on what you'd like. And I might end up, after this video is posted, I will probably post some polls in the Instagram stories to see you know, what you guys prefer. So if you aren't following me on Instagram already, please make sure you go ahead and do that. I am Knitting Expat, all one word, on Instagram. So the ideas that I have are for like pattern clubs. Like last year I did the New York Sock Collection Club, and this year I'm doing the Cozy Sock Club and the Wanderlust Sock Club coinciding. So I've done sock clubs up until now, and I kind of wanted to expand on that idea a little bit and do something maybe a little bit different. I'm thinking of still having a sock club for next year, but only one sock club, and then maybe in addition to just a sock club, doing a different kind of club. So I wanted your ideas on what kind of alternative club idea I should do. One idea I had was like an accessories club, so something like you know, hats, cowls, scarves, gloves, mittens, not gloves. I don't have the patience for gloves. Mittens, hats, cowls, that sort of stuff. Another one I had in mind was more of like a gift knits club, like with the idea of patterns that are fun, quick gift knits, great for gifting to other people, maybe slightly chunkier yarns like DK worsted weight. Again, mainly sticking with accessories, things where, you know, you don't have to be super specific about sizing. Stuff where you can use just a single skein of yarn, you know, so it's not too cost prohibitive if you're gift knitting. Like you might not have, you know, you might not want to spend a lot of money on really expensive yarns, or if you do, you only want to buy that one special skein to knit for somebody. So something along those lines. And the last idea I had, which I'm actually kind of quite excited about, and I may do this at some point anyway, is a club based around designs using mini skeins. And so all the designs would predominantly use mini skeins. There might be some which incorporates like a main color and then a set of mini skeins. But the idea being, like, mini skeins are so prevalent in the knitting world right now. They are so well loved, which is great, and I love using them myself. But I want to provide some ideas and some pattern ideas specifically for mini skeins or scraps, leftovers that you can do, which is something more than just, or which you can use them for, which is something more than just using for heels, toes and cuffs on a pair of socks or something, which seems to be the majority of what people use them for, or for scrap projects. And as great as both of those things are, and I love doing both. I love scrappy projects and I love using contrasting colors in heels, toes and cuffs on my socks. but sometimes, you know, you want to do something a bit different. And I've already designed a few, or at least one pattern that incorporates mini skeins in a big way, and that is the changes shawl. So for this club, it wouldn't be designed like quite on that scale. Again, I'm thinking more in lines of like socks and other accessories for like the minis club. There might be one big design in there, like a shawl, as well in the mix, and to kind of like mix things up. Most of these clubs I imagine to be, obviously I haven't designed anything yet, but I'm imagining them to be more aimed towards a more experienced beginner, I guess. Maybe not an absolute beginner. The gift knits one would be suitable, I believe, the way I had it imagined in my head would be suitable for a beginner. But the other two sort of ideas I had would be something to expand a bit more on your basic knitting skills, and to help you explore different stitch techniques, different ideas, maybe different shaping, maybe different actual items of knitting that you haven't tried before, just something a bit different. And so that's why I would gear it more towards a more experienced beginner / intermediate knitter, just because, you know, have a bit more fun with some new techniques. There again, like I said, I haven't planned anything, so this is all just stuff I've been thinking about over the last month or two. And it's getting to a point now in the year where I want to start planning for next year's patterns and next year's projects and stuff like that. So that was a thought that I had. And yeah, so I'd like to know what you think. Do you guys want another sock club for next year? I'll probably just have one sock. If I do a sock club, it will be just one, and it will probably be just 6 months, 6 patterns spread out over the year. So it'll be one every other month. And yeah, and I think what I will do is probably do it slightly differently this time, and I'll start with, it'll be with beginner level patterns at the beginning, gradually getting more and more advanced in terms of techniques and style and actual like intricacy of the patterns throughout the year. And then the last one will be like the most complicated, comparative to the first one. None of my sock patterns are particularly complicated, so I don't imagine them to be like super complex, but you know, the last pattern in the club will be more complicated than the first pattern in the club, but the idea being that you're progressing your skills as you work through it. So that was an idea that I had about the sock club for next year, because I do like the idea of doing that and continuing to do that. And then yeah, so then I'm tossing up between having like an accessories club, and again with that one I might also have one shawl design in there as well, like one sort of standout, bigger, more elaborate design. I find I didn't want it to be all shawls, because shawls can be very time consuming to both design and to knit, and for you guys to knit, and I want you guys to have the opportunity to be able to keep up with the pattern club if you wanted to. So again, the idea with that would be there would be 6 designs, again every other month throughout the year. Actually, all of these clubs, the idea behind them would be probably 6 designs to spread out over the year. So I'm thinking of doing a socks one, and then either an accessories one with mini skeins, or like a gift knits kind of club. So I'm curious, which one are you guys most interested in? Do you even want to see another sock club next year? Would you rather I did like an accessories club with mini skeins and a gift knits club instead? Or, you know, how would you like to see that play out? Like what are your thoughts? What are your opinions? And I would love to hear what you guys would like to see. Is there something else you'd like to see from me that I haven't mentioned or haven't thought about potentially? So by all means do let me know. I'm very intrigued to hear your thoughts on that. And yeah, so I'm gonna take a quick break and I'll be back to answer your questions. Like I said, I asked on Instagram yesterday, today, I don't know if I actually said, today is Friday the 20th of July. And yeah, so I posted on Instagram yesterday asking you guys for your questions that I was doing this Q&A today, and I wanted to know what you guys wanted to know. That sounds like a bit of a tongue twister. Anyway, so I got answers in a variety of places. I got some in my inbox, some in response directly to the story, and some on the post that I posted in my feed, in my grid. So I will go through and answer them as best I can. I'm not going to say who's asked which questions, because I don't know if anyone would like to remain anonymous. So I'm just going to assume everyone's going to be anonymous in this. Okay, so the first question is, this person has asked, as a new knitter, I've been told it's important to be able to read your knitting. If you could give any tips or direct towards a website or video that could help with that, I'd really appreciate it. Okay, and yes, I will definitely direct you to a video. This is the video that helped me learn how to read my knitting. I never really understood what it meant to read your knitting when I first started out, so I can totally appreciate the confusion. I feel like when you first start to knit and you first get involved with the online knitting community and with knitting patterns and stuff like that, it's like learning a new language. There's all these acronyms and different terms that don't necessarily make sense to you when you first start out, and it takes a while before all of that sinks in. And yeah, it really is like learning another language. So yes, I will link a video. There's a video by a Very Pink Knits. There's a very good knitting channel on YouTube. She does a lot of really good tutorials, and she has a really good tutorial on how to read your knitting. And actually, Very Pink Knits, I credit her with learning how to knit. Quite literally, I taught myself how to knit, and her videos are pretty much how I learned. Along with maybe a couple of other channels that I watched as well in terms of knitting tutorials, but hers was the predominant one. And even now, if there's a stitch or something I'm not entirely sure about, I will go and check her channel for a tutorial first before I look anywhere else. I really rate her videos, and they're really well produced as well, which helps. So I will link her channel below as well as the direct video that I'm talking about. I highly recommend it for anyone who's a new knitter. And another question I had was, if you had time for another craft, what would you like to try? And I had a couple of variations on that question, basically saying, you know, if you weren't knitting, what else would you like to do? Or if you had more time, what else would you like to try? And I think for me, the answer would be, I would love to get back into doing more sewing. I did a lot of sewing before I got pregnant. And yeah, so I definitely like to get back into more sewing, although that's something I've done before. But something new I would like to try, I'm actually very intrigued by embroidery. Not so much cross stitch, but embroidery. I really enjoy the fact that with embroidery you can create images that look very different. They're very textural, you've got different stitches that you can use. So whereas with cross stitch, it's all the same stitch. Essentially, you're doing the cross stitch pattern. You're just using different colors to create your overall finished piece. And whilst I think those are beautiful, I don't feel like that would be particularly engaging for me. Like, I don't find that particularly appealing for me to do. I appreciate that they're beautiful, and I can appreciate other people enjoy them, and I'm happy about that, but it's just not something for me necessarily. But I am definitely intrigued by embroidery, and it's definitely something I would like to try my hand at some point. Maybe once Leila's a little bit older and has the dexterity to hold like a darning needle, I might teach her. We might learn to embroider together, which I think would be really cute. Because I've seen a few of other YouTubers, podcast YouTubers who do knitting podcasts, and when their children are sort of an age to be able to do that sort of thing, they start with embroidery, because they may not have the dexterity to be able to do actual like knitting, but they can do the embroidery movements. So at least that's my understanding. I might be completely wrong, but definitely embroidery is something I would like to try in the future, and I think it'd be really cute to do with Leila when she's a bit older. Okay, I keep checking my phone because the questions are on here. Okay, so I'm just going to go through these questions one by one. Do you always Kitchener your sock toes? Is there an alternative? Yes, I do always Kitchener my socks closed. The two other alternatives I can think of, but I have never tried myself. One is to turn the sock inside out and do a 3-needle bind off on the inside. The second would be to decrease to few enough stitches, like 6 stitches or something, and then just pull the thread through and pull it tight, kind of like you do at the top of a hat when you're closing off the end of the hat. So just pull the tail yarn, thread it through a needle, and then thread it through all the live stitches and pull it closed, and then weave in the ends on the inside. Those are the two alternatives I can think of to Kitchenering your toes, if you're not a fan of that, but neither are ones that I've tried, so I can't vouch for how they hold up. Another question was, what kind of work does Perry do that you can move to so many great places? I have made it a point of fact not to really talk about my husband's work on the podcast, just because it's not really relevant, and it's, you know, there's a lot of confidentiality involved with the work that he does, so I don't know the full details of what he does day to day. But essentially he's a business consultant, so that's what he does. And then I had a lot of questions from people being like, do you no longer live in New York City? Are you coming back to New York? How long are you staying in London? Are you living in London full time now? Like a lot of questions based around that. So I'm just gonna take the time and to like address this situation. So for those of you who've been watching a while, you'll know the history, but essentially we were living in New York for basically last year, 2017. Our daughter Leila was born in New York, and we planned on staying longer, but due to visa situations, the visa we were there on was only a 1-year visa, and we had to apply for a different visa. Long story short, we didn't get picked for the visa last year because it's a bit of a lottery system. The specific visa we go for, or we are eligible to apply for, is there are 65,000 visas and like 200,000 people apply each year for it. So we didn't get selected for it last year. This year we applied again whilst in the UK. The company my husband works for is actually based out of New York, so they applied on his behalf for him, and we were selected, thankfully. So we got past the stage we didn't get past last year, but because of all the new rules and regulations that are being brought in by the current US president, things are taking a bit longer than they would have done otherwise. So at the moment, we are just waiting for the US government to get in touch and tell us what we need to do next. So there's no guarantee yet that we will still get the visa, even though we were selected. There are still extra like checks and stuff that they want to do, I assume. We still haven't heard anything. So until they get in touch with us, we still don't know what's happening. Our lawyer, our immigration lawyer's estimate is that we should have some idea of what's happening by the end of this year. So it doesn't look like it's going to happen this year. If we do get the visa, it'll probably be sometime early next year before anything is resolved, or we have an idea that we can move back to New York or anything like that. There's still a pretty good chance that we can come back to New York, that we will get the visa. But like I said, nothing is for certain in this world, especially now. And so we're not relying on it. So we're just trying to get on with our lives in the UK at the moment as much as possible, but knowing that there's a chance that we're going to go back to New York at some point. This was also the reason why we moved the cats back to London, because we didn't know how long this was going to take. And the idea was that it was always going to be a temporary situation, and if we thought it was going to take longer than midsummer to get our visa, then we would bring the boys back, which is what we've done. So yeah, I think that pretty much addresses the situation with New York. Our plan is to go back to New York if we get the visa. If we don't get the visa, I guess we just stay in London, and there is nothing wrong with that at all. We would be absolutely happy to stay in the UK as well as we would be happy to go back to New York. I think the thing for us is that going back to when we first met, even one of the things we both spoke about is about how much we love New York, and how much at some point in our lives we would love to live in New York. It was not something either of us ever thought would be feasible. We never thought we would be in a financial situation where that would actually be a possibility for us. And so yeah, so to actually have ended up in a situation where that was going to happen and that was possible was amazing, and we were so excited about it. And we loved the year that we were there. We absolutely loved it. And I think for us, whilst we would still be happy in the UK, the reason why we want to go back to New York is we just don't feel like we've had enough of it. We don't feel like we did everything we wanted to do whilst we lived there. And so it just felt like our time there was incomplete, which is kind of why we want to go back. But like I said, if it doesn't work out, then we're not going to be devastated either. Like, we're happy either way. We would just like a resolution to the situation. I think that's mainly where our head's at the moment with that one. Okay, what are your favorite books? I will be honest, I don't really read much at the moment at all. So I don't have any current favorites. So yeah, I'm afraid I really can't answer that question because I don't really have anything I can recommend right now. So yeah, I'm sorry about that. Okay, so next, another question I got is, how do you not get a ridge on the inside of socks when you're picking them up? I can't get it. Okay, so I think what they're talking about is when you're working on a pair of socks, if you're using one of my sock patterns and you decide to use the mini heel flap adjustment or the modified heel flap adjustment and the German short row heel, or even with whatever short row heel, there gets a point where you have to pick up a few stitches in your mini heel flap, or even in a regular heel flap you'll be picking up stitches along the side. And the question is asking about how do you avoid getting a ridge on the inside of your socks when you pick up your stitches. And the answer is you don't. You will get a little ridge. I mean, it's not even that obvious in these ones. And the ridge is essentially a few stitches here. It's really not that obvious. As long as you're picking up in the very first stitch in that edge, it's not going to be that noticeable. I've never had anybody tell me that they've noticed any sort of bumpiness on the inside of their socks. It's not uncomfortable to wear, it's not a big deal essentially. I don't do anything special to avoid it because you can't. When you're picking up stitches, you will have a slight ridge on the wrong side of the work. It's just the way it is. There's nothing to do about that, unfortunately. But like I said, it's so small that I don't really foresee it being an issue when you're wearing it, unless you're picking up 3 or 4 stitches in, which I'm not sure why you would do that. So I hope that answers your question. Where will you move next? What country do you want to be in once Nugget is in school? So Nugget is our nickname for our daughter Leila. Well, we would like to go back to New York, as I mentioned earlier. Our hope would be to be back there and to be there for a few years until we decide what we want to do next. I don't think for us we're ever going to be in a position where we're like, this is where we're going to be forever now. We're both, at the moment anyway, I don't think there's anywhere for us right now where we're like, yeah, this is it forever. But I think we will get there eventually, and probably by the time Nugget starts school, we will definitely be more in the mindset of trying to figure out where we're going to settle a little bit more long term, whether that's going to be in the US, in New York, or in the UK. We don't really know at the moment. So where would I like to be? I would just like to be somewhere settled. That would be nice. Not having to move every 1 or 2 years would be a nice change. But you know, in terms of where we want to be, we'd like to either be in New York or in London. I think those are our well, UK rather. Those are our preferences. The next question I had is, where do you find inspirations for your designs? I find inspiration from everywhere. Sometimes if I'm a bit stumped for ideas, I'll browse Ravelry, or I'll browse my stitch dictionaries. I have a few which I've shown before, and I've just like day-to-day life, when I'm walking around, I notice what people are wearing. There's no one particular place that I go to for inspiration. Sometimes a current design I'm working on inspires another design, which is quite interesting. Like my changes pullover actually inspired 3 other designs that came after it. None of which are released at the moment, but it did inspire more designs. And then one of the other ones I was working on inspired another design that I've got an idea for, and I haven't started working on it yet, but it's an idea and something I've benched for the future. Basically, I get inspiration from everywhere. Sometimes even the things I'm currently designing inspire new designs, which is crazy. Another question I got was, can you make a living from your design work, or does Perry make the most, especially now with Leila? I will be honest, I don't make enough from designing at the moment to essentially have a full-time income. But I also don't work full-time on my designing because I have a baby and I look after her most of the time. She is my predominant job is a mother. I'm her mother. That's my predominant role. Knitting and knitting design is essentially like my side hustle. It's my side job. It's the thing I do when I have the time for it. And with her going to nursery now a couple of days a week, that has freed up some of my time so I can focus on it a bit more. I don't think I'm ever going to be in a situation where I can, I don't know, maybe I will in the future, but at the moment I'm not in a situation where I can say I am making a living off of my design work. I would love to be in that situation. I would love to be able to say that what I'm earning as a knitting designer has replaced what was my full-time salary before I stopped working. That would be amazing, but I don't know if that will ever happen. And we are in a fortunate enough position that we are not reliant on me earning what was previously my full-time salary before I stopped working. We are incredibly fortunate to be in that situation. So, you know, that has given me some flexibility and some freedom not to have to be so stressed about it. So yeah, I hope that answers that question. So someone has asked how to make a gauge swatch, how many stitches and how many rows to get a good idea. I think that really depends on the pattern. Most patterns will give you a gauge based on how many stitches and how many rows in 4 inches. So I would suggest you cast on with maybe 5 to 6 stitches more than the gauge. So for example, if the gauge says it's 24 stitches in 4 inches, cast on 30, or cast on 35, cast on like between 6 to 10 stitches extra. And then if it says it's 36 rows in 4 inches, knit for about an extra 5 to 10 rows, because then once it's washed and blocked, you can get a good idea, a good measure of the 4 inches in rows and in stitches without going right to the edge. So I hope that helps. Someone has asked, please can you come have coffee and knit with me? Yeah, sure. Tell me where you are. If you live in the UK, then maybe we can sort something out. And then I've asked, what is your favorite mainstream yarn? So by mainstream yarn, I'm assuming you mean commercial yarn, stuff that's readily available. I think my favorite commercial yarn would be like Reggio or Opal for socks. I absolutely love working with those yarns for socks. They're really hard wearing. They have great colors and great patterns. They're perfect for gift knitting because they're very easy care. And yeah, I think that would have to be my favorite commercial or mainstream yarn. How long did it take you to discover your style? It took a while, I think. I just started out, I'm assuming you mean in terms of, oh, okay, that could go one of many ways actually. I thought initially that the question was intended to ask how long did it take me to discover my style of designing and like the patterns I design? But I guess that could mean a whole bunch of things, style. I'm gonna go with patterns and how I design my, the kind of designs I come up with. So I feel like I started by designing things that I was interested in, things that I wanted that didn't already exist, for example, maybe, or stuff that I was interested in was where I started from. And then I started noticing a pattern in my designs. I liked using bright colors, I liked using bold colors, I liked incorporating lace and texture and cables and stuff into my designs. And I've noticed I've gone through different phases with things. Like I started out very lace heavy. I loved incorporating lace patterns into my designs, and then I gradually moved more towards cables, and now I'm really into textures, which also incorporates cables. It's just, I'm very into textures right now, so that's kind of where my design focus is in terms of patterns and stuff that I create. I still love lace, and I have incorporated it in a few designs recently as well, like my Parisian Dreams pullover has some lace in it, but it also has a lot of texture, which I absolutely love. So I feel like my designing style has evolved over time as I have changed over time as well, and I feel like it always will change. I'm not huge on following trends. I don't really know what's trendy, I don't know what's hip, I don't know what's new and like upcoming in terms of in the knitting world. I don't follow it that closely, and to be honest, I've never been one to follow trends even in my general day-to-day life. I kind of go with what I enjoy and what I like to knit and what I like to design, and I assume, I hope that other people will enjoy it as well, and that's basically how or what my style is. I like creating patterns that are easy to follow, very well explained, for the most part suitable for beginners. Use bright bold colors in a fun way, and yeah, just to encourage more creativity. I think that's kind of my style. So someone else has asked, do you have a personal yarn preference? I'm assuming they mean in terms of like fiber content. I think my personal yarn preference would be something like a superwash merino nylon or a superwash wool nylon blend for socks where possible, because they're easier to care for. I personally don't mind having my own socks knit out of 100% wool or non-superwash yarns, but if I'm going to be gifting socks, they have to have the nylon content, they have to be machine washable, because if whoever I gift them to, I don't want to put the burden of having to hand wash socks on to someone I'm gifting something to, especially if they're a non-knitter. But in general, do I have a personal yarn preference? I don't think so. I like experimenting with new fibres and new yarns and different weights. I guess my favourite weight of yarn to knit with, well, the one that I knit with the most is probably fingering weight. I love knitting with DK though. I absolutely love DK weight yarn. I think it's really soft, it's squishy, it's usually because it's like the right sort of thickness for it. It's got, depending on what, you can knit it at a very loose gauge or at a very tight gauge, and it gives like great density or drape, and it's very quick, it knits up very quickly, so it's very satisfying. And yeah, but I think fingering probably would be my favourite because it's quite versatile. You can hold fingering double and you get a DK/worsted weight sort of thickness, again depending on what gauge you knit it at. So I guess fingering weight would be my yarn preference in terms of weight, and in terms of fibre content, I love a good soft merino, but I'm also very open to trying different yarns. I tried Polworth yarn for the first time recently. That was really lovely and squishy. A good BFL is very sturdy and great for certain types of projects, and I love the drape that alpaca gives. So I think everything has its own place. Okay, someone else has asked, I heard you say you were bilingual. What languages do you speak? I speak English and Farsi, and Farsi is the language that's spoken in Iran, which is the country my parents are from. So I'm Iranian and British. I have both nationalities as well. I have both passports. And someone else has asked, is it still possible to become your test knitter? The link in your profile has disappeared. Yes, it is, and the link is now back, because there was an issue last week, or the week before actually, or recently, I can't remember when exactly. Recently there was an issue with Linktree, which was the website I was using to be able to have like a landing page with multiple links that you could click to get to different things, because Instagram only lets you have one link on your profile. There was an issue with Linktree where like certain accounts were becoming deactivated because they had a Linktree link in their profiles. So I went ahead and deleted it because I was on holiday at the time with my family, and I didn't have the time then to sort of figure it out. But now, since getting back, it's been resolved, and I just forgot to put the link back up. So thank you for reminding me. The link is now back up on my Instagram page. I will also post a link below this video on YouTube for where you can go to sign up to be a test knitter if you're interested. What happens is you just fill in your details. It's just a few short questions, just letting me know what sort of projects you're interested in test knitting. And then whenever I have a suitable project available for test knitting, I go through the list, I email everybody, and I ask you guys essentially to let me know if you're available for that test knit. And then from the people who respond, I pick based on my requirements for what I need for that test knit. And I do that for every single test knit that comes out. So if you're not selected for one, then there's a chance you'll be selected for the next one. I just sort of go through and pick based on what my requirements are for each test knit. How long are you going to be living in the UK, and are you hoping to return to America? Yes, I think I've already answered that question. We're not sure how long we're staying, and yes, we would like to go back to the US. I'd love to know more about your design process. How do ideas transform into patterns for you? I talked a bit more about my design process actually in a couple of episodes ago. So I don't think it was the last episode I did, but the episode before that, podcast episode, I went into maybe it was the one before that. One of the last 3 podcast episodes, I can't remember now which one, I went into detail and I showed you guys my design folder and like how I do different things. I don't think I'm ever going to go through like an actual very super detailed step-by-step of how I go from like this idea to a swatch to then figuring out the maths and then all the calculations. I won't be doing that, but I give you a bit more insight into how I do it. And I also have the hashtag this is my design process on Instagram, where every week or so, whenever I can, I will, if I'm working on something interesting, I will post with some more details of what I've been doing that day and a little bit more about my design process that way. So if you're interested, you can follow that hashtag and learn more about my design process that way. What books, classes, resources did you use to learn how to modify and then design sweaters / jumpers? None really. I've knit quite a few garments before I started designing garments, so I had a vague idea of, you know, general construction, and then I've designed a fair few patterns as well, so I had a fair idea of pattern writing. And I kind of just went from there. I just took the basic ideas of what I knew and what I was trying to achieve and just went from there. I do occasional searches online for specific things if I needed help with something. But generally I didn't take any courses, I didn't do anything, I didn't take any special classes. I know there are plenty of classes out there for learning how to design garments or just learning how to design in general, but I didn't do any of that. I sort of just figured it out for myself, which is why I don't always feel comfortable giving advice on how to design and stuff like that, because I feel like I've just figured it out as I've gone along and I'm not necessarily sure that my way's the best way of doing it. So what is your go-to yarn shop in New York City? I'm visiting there in a couple of weeks. So I would definitely suggest Pearl Soho in New York. Nitty City is one of my favorites as well. It's kind of like organized chaos when you go in there. And Brooklyn General is a definite must if you want to if you're heading out into Brooklyn. And Woollen is also in Brooklyn. So actually Woollen and Brooklyn General are relatively close to each other, quite easy to get from one to the other. So yeah, those are my 4 sort of recommendations. There are a few other yarn shops in New York as well, but those are the 4 that I would recommend to anyone who's visiting. So the next question I got was, how did we pick names for the boys? And this was actually a question that was in the Q&A thread in the Ravelry group as well, which I never got around to answering yet. Or I hadn't got around to answering yet. And so how do we come up with the names? So I picked Hugo's name because I really liked the name. I like Victor Hugo, I like Les Mis. Victor Hugo is the author of Les Mis, if you're not aware. And I actually really wanted to call Derek Victor because I thought that would be really cute, then we'd have Victor and Hugo. But I picked Hugo. Derek was picked by Perry, and Derek was actually Perry's grandfather's name. So that's where that came from. No sort of like special reasons behind it. What's your favourite funny and or cute Leila story? To be honest, all of them are my favourite. She's just such a ham. She's so funny, she's so adorable. She has her grumpy moments, that's for sure, but she's so sweet and she's really quite funny. She's funny when she's like trying to get your food from you, like when she's trying to get crunchy nut cereal from Perry or ice cream from whoever's got ice cream. She can just be really cute sometimes. Basically everything that she does is my favourite thing. I can't think of one specific thing right now to mention. As someone else has asked, how do you get knitting time with a toddler? Seriously, I'm desperate. Honestly, I don't knit that much during the day anymore. During the daytime, I don't get a lot of knitting time. If I'm home, when Leila's having her nap in the day, that's when I knit. I knit when she naps. And I knit in the evenings when she's gone to bed. That's my knitting time. That literally is it. Unless Leila's at nursery, like today, I then have what I call a work day. So even on my work days, I don't necessarily do a lot of knitting unless I'm at a point in a project where I need to knit through a certain section to kind of figure out the design aspect of it. I try and keep my work days as work days and work on designs rather than just personal projects. But sometimes that happens as well. I sometimes use those days for some personal stuff as well, depending on what's going on. Another question is, hi, I know you've been traveling a lot. Where would you like to live if you had the choice? In terms of our current situation, like day-to-day life and stuff, if I could pick where we could live, I'd probably choose to be back in New York right now. But if we were just talking like pie in the sky, where I would like to live, honestly, I think Perry and I would really love to live in Iceland. We both loved it there. We've been there twice so far. We keep talking about going back at some point. And the last time we were there, Perry was seriously trying to see if he could find the job. So I think sort of like a close second to going back to New York would be, if it was ever possible, which I don't really think it would be, just because of the nature of the work that Perry does. Iceland really isn't the right place for that. So, but Iceland would be lovely. We both loved it so much there that we would love to go back, even if only for a little bit. Another question about, how did you learn all the mathy, knitting, pattern, size, designing, gauge stuff? Okay, I didn't really learn in a specific way. I sort of learned gradually, organically through the design process. I just sort of figured out, okay, well now I need to figure out how to make this fit this size, or how this should be, you know, how this needs to be made bigger to fit that, or smaller to fit that. And it's sort of just trial and error, to be honest. I started with children's garments because they're a little bit more forgiving. They don't need specifically a whole ton of shaping, so they can be quite boxy and still work perfectly fine. So that was where I started, and it was quite good because children's garments are really quick to knit up, and they, like I said, they're quite forgiving. And yes, if you make a mistake, you notice it pretty quickly and you can make adjustments and stuff. And I sort of just learned that way. And to be honest, actually, I've even, you know, as time has gone on, I've learned more. And one of my children's designs, the Little Nugget sweater, I'm actually going to go back and redesign it because there are a few things about it that I want to change. So that's going to be redesigned at some point later this year as well. So stay tuned for that. I'm always learning. I think things can always be improved. I actually do need to sit down and do a bit of an overhaul of some of my older patterns and update them and bring them in line with what I'm doing now, and stuff like that, but just got to find the time of day to do that. So yeah, I didn't do anything specific to learn it. I've generally always been pretty good at maths at school. Maths was always one of my strong suits. I've always enjoyed doing maths, and the maths aspect of designing doesn't intimidate me. It doesn't scare me. I don't find it scary or anything like that. It's nothing more complicated than adding, subtracting, multiplying, and division. There is nothing more complicated than those 4 basic principles of mathematics. With the kind of design work I do, I know you can probably get like super fancy with different types of stuff, but the basics of what I do, that's the majority of what I need to use. And so it's pretty basic level maths. It's just a lot of it. What's been your favorite Leilaism for 2018? I think my favorite thing that she has started saying recently is "oh dear." It is by far the cutest thing. If you've watched our vlog from when we were on holiday last week, it is so darn cute. She just goes like, "oh dear, oh dear." It's really adorable. I absolutely love that she started saying that now. It's really quite cute. She started saying a few other words as well. Like she started saying teddy, but she can't quite say the T, so she's like Eddie. And she's like, yeah. Instead of, like, she doesn't say yes, she's like, yeah. And I think it's because I say yeah a lot instead of yes, so she says yeah. And she says baba a lot, which in Farsi, baba means daddy. But she seems to be using the word baba to mean person or thing that I like. So whenever something happens that she's excited about, she just like starts squealing and she's like baba, baba. So it doesn't necessarily mean daddy for her. It just means something she's really excited about. And then she says dada, she says mama. She has said mummy and daddy before, but doesn't say it frequently enough. She started saying ba for ball, and she points at a ball, she's like ba. Another one she started saying recently is abba, and ab in Farsi means water. So my mum refers to bath time as abba. It's just a colloquial term, it's not an actual word for bath time. It's like a slang, like baby language sort of thing. So she started saying abba when it's bath time, or just when she wants water or something, she just says that. So all of those are my favourites. I don't have a favourite Leilaism. I think just the favourite thing is oh dear. If I had to pick out of all of them, oh dear is probably my favourite, just because it's so darn cute. Do you have any information for knitters who want to try designing? Honestly, not really, because like I said, I learned how to do my designs quite organically. I learned myself. I sort of self-taught the whole way. I know there are courses and stuff online on Craftsy and other platforms that you can use to teach yourself how to design. I've just realised there's really loud sort of like noises from outside. I'm really sorry. It's boiling up here in the attic and I can't really close any more windows. I've really only got one window open and it's already pretty hot in here, so I can't close it. I'm really sorry about that. But in terms of information, people want to start knitting designs, you can get a book about it. There are plenty of books out there about it. There are courses that you can do. Personally, I just say just jump in and start with something you're interested in designing and just sort of figure it out as you go. I'm sorry I can't be more helpful. Like I said earlier, I don't really feel comfortable giving advice on how people should start designing because I don't really know that the way that I do it is necessarily the best way. Was knitting always your favourite, or have you been hooked on other crafts? Okay, so just to make things clear, knitting isn't something I've always done because I didn't always know how to knit. I only learned how to knit about just over 3-4 years ago now, to 2014. So yeah, 4 years ago now that I've been knitting. I have to think about that. Yeah. And but before knitting, I've always been interested in different crafts and crafty things in general. I used to make jewellery out of beads. I used to, what else did I used to do? I definitely did a lot of beading jewellery. I did, like, photography was something I was really into for a long time. What are the other things that I've done? I've done other things now, and just my mind's gone blank, I can't remember. But I've always enjoyed doing things, like creative things. And there was a period, like a lull period, where I didn't do much creatively other than photography, and even that wasn't happening particularly regularly at the time. So you know, there was an overall lull for a while, and then knitting came into my life and I never looked back. So I definitely think knitting is the one that has stuck the most. I still do photography a lot and I still really enjoy it, but I had a lot of issues the online knitting community, the online photography community is not as kind as the knitting community. There is a lot of bad mouthing and a lot of negativity involved with it, and it just wasn't something I was very happy with being involved with, and I didn't want to be in that environment. It wasn't very kind, and so I had some negative experiences with photography, both online and in person, with like clubs I've been involved with. So I kind of ended up taking a bit of a backseat with photography. I still enjoy it, I absolutely love it. It is something I'm very passionate about. And at some point I did think it was going to be a career choice for me, but it just didn't work out that way. And I'm actually quite happy about it because I enjoy it more as a hobby than as a job. And I feel like if it was a job for me, then I would have lost some of that passion for it. Things have taken a bit of a backseat on the photography side recently, just with Leila and everything, but I still do enjoy taking photos, and I try to take my big camera, my proper like digital SLR camera, out with me whenever I can. Usually it's when I have help with Leila. At the moment she's at an age where it's quite difficult for me to manage her and make sure I don't destroy my camera at the same time. So it's usually something I can do when I have other people with me. But I do enjoy taking photos of her and of other people and just places we go to. So yeah, I look forward to getting more back into my photography as she gets a bit older. Okay, so now I've just popped back to my Instagram feed to answer some more questions. So these are the ones that were posted under my posts on my actual feed, not just in stories. So, okay, on the topic of photography. I think you're an amazing photographer. Thank you so much, you're very kind. Both your knitting related photos and those of Leila, it helps that she is super cute, it really does. Do you have any favourite photo tips you can share? Okay, photo tips I can share. Composition is everything. Honestly, a bad photo can usually be fixed with a change in composition. So I would suggest, if you're not sure about composition, then try taking different photos, the same photo from different angles, and trying different setups. There's the rule of 3, which you can Google that. It's basically, if you look at a picture, sort of split it with like grid lines, so you've got like 9 squares, and line up your subject, your main focus, along one of those grid lines. So like not dead center, slightly off center, like 1/3 to the center, or that usually helps with like perspective. There are a lot of things that you can do with photography in terms of composition that you can look up online as well. I'm not a great photography teacher, but in terms of editing tips, like if you're taking photos on your phone and you want to upload to Instagram, I would say don't go too heavy on filters, don't go too heavy on like just tweaking any of the settings. You tweak things a little bit, but don't go too heavy on it. Generally I tend to adjust for brightness, contrast, and sort of like sharpness. But I really don't mess with saturation, because that's one of the things that can really make your photo look a bit funky. I also don't go with like super crazy filters on Instagram. I do use a couple of filters, but I usually dial them way down. They're like 50% or less. I find certain ones like boost certain colors or certain things in different pictures that I like, but otherwise I don't really do a whole lot with it. I don't go too crazy on that side either. But yeah, I think composition is the big one. And if you have one of the newer iPhones, they have the portrait mode. I try and use that as much as possible, so that gives you the nice sort of depth of field effect as well. Other than that, I do use my current camera, which I'm recording on. I use that as well. That's a really good camera for photos as well as for video, so I enjoy using that. And it also has Wi-Fi capability, so I can just transfer directly from my camera to my phone without having to use a computer in between, which is great for like on the go. Another question about are you going to be living in London long? I think I've answered that question already. A non-knitting question: what's your favourite music to listen to, or are you interested like I am to multiple genres? Yes, I am interested in multiple genres. I listen to everything and all sorts. I typically listen to the radio, to be honest. I don't listen to a lot of like music. I just typically listen to the radio more than anything else. Okay, someone's trimming a hedge and it's really noisy, so I had to go close the window, so I'm just going to suffer in the heat. Okay, so next question. You seem to constantly have something new you're designing. I'd love to hear where inspiration for your designs come from. Does it come from wanting a specific style, something, so you come up with it? Or are you inspired by colours and yarns or something entirely different? Again, I think I've answered that question. I'm kind of inspired by all sorts of things. Sometimes it is because there's something I'm looking for and I can't find it, so I design it. And other times I'm inspired by a colorway or by a yarn or by something I've seen, all sorts. I know you knit a lot. Do you have any problems with hand pain? I'm suffering from some problems due to my elbow being bent so frequently from knitting. Honestly, the only answer I have to that is take breaks. I don't actually knit as much as I used to, but I guess I do knit quite a lot on those grand scheme of things, in the grand scheme of things. So my suggestion is to take breaks, exercise, like stretch your arms and your elbows, and just in general stretch a bit more. I think you can find some good videos on YouTube about it as well. I personally don't do a whole lot of stretching. I really should do more, especially with my arms. But I don't find I suffer too badly from wrist pain or arm pain from knitting. And if I do start to feel a twinge of something, I just take a break for a little bit and then come back to it maybe the next day or something. I try to listen to my body when it's telling me that it's had enough. As a knitting designer, are you particularly good at maths? You seem to be, and I wondered if there's an area, if it was an area of strength for you. Yes, I would say I was probably better than the average person at maths when I was at school. It was one of my stronger subjects. I didn't necessarily enjoy it very much, but it was definitely one of my stronger subjects at school. And I always did particularly well at it. I think I liked it because it was quite logical, and I'm quite logically minded. When it comes to thinking about things, I tend to be very logical in the way I process things. And as such, I think maths works for me because there's a definitive, you're either right or you're wrong. There's no middle ground with maths. It's not subjective. You can't, you know, oh, maybe that's slightly right if you think about it in this way. Or, no, it's right or it's wrong, and there's no two ways about it. So I like maths for that reason. And I think that's kind of why it worked for me and why I did well at it, versus other subjects like English language or something where, you know, it's quite subjective based on who's reading your work as to whether or not it's good. Did that make sense? I hope it did. Do you think yak would work well in a sweater, or does it behave like alpaca and stretch over time? Honestly, I don't know. I mean, my brain tells me that yak would act similarly to alpaca, but I rarely have seen, I don't think I've ever seen yak yarn, or yak in a yarn where it was predominantly yak fiber. Does that make sense? Yak is usually blended with merino or some other wool. It's not typically the main fiber content in the yarn. So I think it should be fine. I guess it just depends on the percentage of yak in the yarn. I'm not actually entirely sure on that one. Maybe you could find out, you could contact if you do have some yarn with yak in it that you want to use for a sweater, maybe contact the manufacturer of that yarn or the person you bought it from to find out what they think. I was wondering, what with your current living situation and all, how do you keep all your notions, needles, yarn and project bags organized? Badly. That's how. Badly organized. It is not very well organized. Although I know where everything is, which is a good thing. It is a little bit here and there. I have a couple of bags in a closet. I have a couple of bags under a table. I have stuff under the bed. I have stuff on the nightstand. I have stuff everywhere in our room. But so it's not really well organized in the way that I would like it to be organized. Sorry, I had a phone call that I had to take. But okay, so what I was saying was, in terms of notions and stuff, not very well organized. I do try and remember to always put my needles back when I finish with a project. I don't leave them hanging out in project bags. Typically, I use my interchangeable needles. These are my high sharps. So they will just go back into the right place, and I still keep all of the little plastic pouches that the different cables came in. So I always put them back in the right pouch so I know what size cables I have. So that way they're not all jumbled up and I'm not trying to guess what cable length I have. The same goes with my fixed circulars. I still have the original packaging for all of my fixed circulars. So when they're done, they go back in the original packet. And I don't have any project bags with me at the moment, but typically when I have a project active, and if I'm using fixed circulars, which is usually for my socks, I put the packaging, the little plastic envelope thingy that the needles come in, goes into the project bag as well. So then when the project is finished, the needles go straight back into their pouch with the right labeling and everything on it. And that's how I store my needles. That's how I've always stored my needles. That's how I will continue to store my needles. I don't have any of these sort of different cases for you to store different needles in. I just use the original cases or original packaging that comes with whatever needles I've bought to store them. I can happily say so far, touch wood, I've never lost any needles. I've also never lost any notions that I'm aware of. I may have lost a couple of stitch markers along the way, but I've never lost a tapestry needle, I've never lost scissors, I've never lost anything really, because I always put things back after I've used them. They always go into the notions pouch or into the project bag, so they're always somewhere, and at the end of a project I always clear out the project bag. I don't just leave it lingering. It just helps to maintain some sort of order. That's what I do essentially. Let's see. If you owned a vacation home, where would it be? That's interesting. Iceland. Can you tell we really like Iceland? I don't know, to be honest. I don't know where it would be. I think we enjoy traveling too much to be tied to one place that much. So I'm not sure. If we had a vacation home somewhere, it'd be somewhere that's probably very different to where we currently live, or where we are living at the time, just so there's a bit of variety. Probably somewhere cold. We're both like cold weather holidays, so probably somewhere cold. Already answered that question. What is your favorite food? Italian. Probably hands down Italian food. I could eat that for the rest of my life. Pasta, pizza, really good bread, just all the yummy things. Where do I get inspirations for my knitwear designs? I think I've already covered that. Moving back to New York, I've covered that. You're such an amazing designer, but I'm curious if there's anything you did once that you don't see yourself designing again. For example, using brioche stitch, designing a specific shawl shape or size, etc. First of all, thank you, you're too kind. But second of all, is there something that I once did that I don't see myself doing again? I don't think so. I don't think there's anything that I've designed or used in a design that I wouldn't consider doing again. I really want to do something else with brioche, I think. I do. I just haven't come up with the right idea yet for it. And I don't know, there's nothing I would say never to. I think I'm very much of a never say never kind of person. And I feel like it's just one of those things that there might be something that I'm not particularly interested in right now, but it'll probably come around again in a couple of years and I might be interested in it again. Like, I'm not super into designing and knitting like full on all over lace patterns right now. I love them, I appreciate them, I think they're beautiful, but I'm probably not in the frame of, you know, I'm not in the place right now where that's what I want to do. That's partly to do with the fact that I have a toddler running around and I can't focus as much on a lace project. So something that's a bit more textured, that's easier to read your work, that has like, it's a little bit easier to do, a little bit more mindlessness somewhat. That sort of thing is more appealing to me right now than full-on intricate lace work. That's not to say that I won't want to design that later or in a couple of years. So I don't think there's anything specifically that I will flat out rule out ever designing that I have done before. There are techniques and things that I haven't tried that I'm not particularly interested in trying, so I probably won't use them in designs, but I don't think there's anything that I've done in the past that I would turn around and say, no, I'm never doing that again. So I hope that answers that question. How did I learn designing for my design work? I think again I've covered that. Okay, I have a knitting question that may be silly. When a pattern tells you to knit on, let's say 4.5mm 16-inch circular needles, do they mean a 16-inch cable or a total 16-inch circumference? For example, 4-inch tips and an 8-inch cable. I didn't have this confusion in the past, but just got my first set of interchangeables this past winter, and I'm having a hard time getting this bit right. Okay, so to answer your question, the length that the pattern calls for in your needle cable length is the total length from tip to tip. So, for example, this sock is on the needles. This is a 40-inch cable. Now that's 40 inches measured from tip to tip of this cable. So folded in half, this is 20 inches, or it should be, and full length will be 40 inches. So the length required includes the length of your cable, sorry, length of your needle and your cable added together. So these are like 5-inch tips. So if you had 5-inch tips and a 40-inch cable, or a cable that will make up a 40, okay, that's a bad example. So For example, with the high set, this is an easy way of explaining it, the cables come labeled like this. See, it says 80 centimeters or 86 centimeters or 32/34 inches. So what it means is if you put this cable on with 4-inch tips, you will get a 32-inch length. If you put it with 5-inch tips, you'll get a 34-inch length. So I hope that helps you understand. The total length includes the tips, not just the length of cable. Again, that's a perfectly understandable thing to be confused about, because it was something I was confused about in the early days of knitting as well, until someone explained it to me. I would love to knit as fast as you do. Any tips? I can't knit with the yarn on my right hand. I also want to know what is your favorite way to knit make one right and make one left. I just do the standard make one right, make one left. Again, Very Pink Knits has very good tutorials for that. And as for how to knit as fast as I do, I honestly don't know how I knit as fast as I do. I guess I'm actually quite an impatient person by nature. So being able to do things fast was always something I was interested in. And again, Very Pink Knits, I attribute learning to knit the way I knit because of her. I basically learnt everything about how I knit from her. So I knit the way that she does. When I first started knitting, I was a full-on thrower. I didn't know any other way of knitting. And until I started watching her videos, and then I was watching her knit and I was like, there's got to be a better way of knitting than this. This is too slow for me. And I was watching her knit, I was like, well, she knits a lot faster. And so I started watching how she was knitting and started trying to copy her. And she has a video on how she knits. And I basically started copying her and practicing until I finally got it. And then gradually over time, my speed picked up as I got more and more experience. And that's basically how I got to where I am. So no, unfortunately, nothing specific other than practice. Another question is, being that you've traveled a lot, where would you raise your family anywhere in the world? Again, I don't know, I think one of the Scandinavian countries. They all seem really appealing to me, mainly because they're a bit colder than what I'm used to, and we like cold weather climates. So like Iceland maybe, or like Sweden, Norway, Finland. They're all countries that I'm very drawn towards. But there again, I don't know, we've not really thought about it in that context of, you know, where in the world we would live if we had the choice of anywhere. You've designed so many beautiful garments and accessories. What is your favorite item to design and why? I think I actually really love designing sweaters and pullovers, even though I've only recently started doing that. I love the fact that you get a really practical and usable finished item out of it. But in terms of just having fun and like being able to be completely crazy with color and everything, I love shawls. I love designing shawls. I think shawls are so much fun. You get a really big like fabric to work with, depending on the size and shape that you're going for. You can go crazy with color. You can play with different textures. You can play with lace patterns. You can play with all sorts on a shawl. It's just like a great big piece of fabric. You can do what you want with. And I feel like it's a really great place to play with color, because you can wear a relatively neutral outfit and just have this shawl be this bright pop of color. You can go a bit crazy with it. Something you wouldn't necessarily wear in a garment, but you can wear as an accessory. And I think they can be really fun to design. And I also really love designing socks. I will be honest, like socks are really satisfying to design. They're relatively quick knits. They can be pretty detailed or fairly simple. You can go a whole lot of ways with socks, and socks are like the ultimate practical gift. So another question is, are you going to move to a house or apartment until you find out if you can return to America? We're currently figuring stuff out in that regards to see what we're going to do, but I'll be sure to let you guys know once we've decided what's happening. How do you fold your hand knit socks? I'm having trouble folding them to fit my sock box. Well, I don't know what your sock box looks like, but typically how I fold my hand knit socks is as follows. So it's a pair of socks. I fold them in half, well, kind of in half. I fold them at the point of the heel. I don't fold them in half like exactly. So you can see the leg of this one is longer than the foot. But I fold it in half at the heel point. and then I just tuck it over once more, and then it typically just goes like this in my drawer. And I don't have a sock box, I just put them in my drawer, and I sort of stack them up like this. So if you're looking from above, it's like this, just stacked on top of each other, but obviously straight. And so then I can just see the top of the sock, and I just grab the one I want for that day. Or I guess if you've got it in a box and you want to like have it rolled up, you could just have it folded in half again, like this, and then just roll it. And then you can either pop it in this way up or that way up, depending how you want it. And yeah, you can have like a little sausage. Those are the two ways that I would do it. Or I guess you could just have it flat like this instead of like that. But again, up to you. I don't have anything more fancy than that for how I store my socks. Do you have any issues with superwash cardigans or pullovers growing after wear or blocking? No, not really. I find sometimes they stretch after blocking, but that as you wear them over time, the superwash thing tends to bounce back and it doesn't really stay stretched out forever. There again, I've never overstretched my knits before, but sometimes like one extra bit might be a little bit more stretched. But then typically I find they bounce back. Do you listen to Audible books? If so, what's your genre? I will be honest, I don't listen to audiobooks either at the moment. Are you a mathematician? Not entirely, no. I'm not qualified as a mathematician. I didn't study maths at university. I did maths up to A level, which I guess is like end of high school level. Is designing a full-time job? Technically being a mother is my full-time job, but yes, in terms of like actual work when I earn money type of job, and designing is my primary money earning job. Do you plan on being a stay-at-home mum while Leila is young? Yes, I am planning on being a stay-at-home mum. I probably always will be. I don't envisage going back to a typical 9-to-5 type of job. I hope to be able to grow my design business. I hope to be able to do more work on this. Whilst I am a stay-at-home mum, Leila does go to nursery for a couple of days a week, and she probably will continue to do that. Just because I feel like it's really good for her socially to get that social interaction with other kids, and also good for me to be able to have some time to be able to focus on things that make me happy as well. So then when I am with her, I can be with her 100% and not feel like I'm trying to do 100 different things at the same time. My husband and I are from extremely diverse cultures. I've always wanted to write our love story. It also makes me curious about how we met stories. Would love to hear yours. You're such a lovely family. Thank you so much. That's so sweet of you. Well, if you've been watching the podcast for a while, you've probably already heard this story once before. I'm pretty sure I've answered this in a previous Q&A video. But if you're new to the podcast or you haven't checked out that video, I will tell you. My husband and I, we actually met at university. We were friends initially. We met when we both volunteered to be representatives for our course at our university's open day. So as it turned out, we were both in the same course, but he was in the year above me. So his birthday's like right at the end of summer, so academically he's 1 year ahead, but he's actually only like 3 weeks older than me, which is really strange, just because of the way the cutoff works in the UK. Right, so we met at university, like I said. We both volunteers for our university's open day for our course, and basically what that meant was we were there to chat to prospective students about what it's really like to be at that university studying the course that we were studying, and just to answer their questions as a fellow student rather than like an adult, like a proper adult, or a teacher. Give them a bit more of an idea of what student life was like at that university. As it happened, the day that we were working, not many students came in for our particular course. Loads came in for the other courses within the same faculty that we were in, but none, or very few, I think 2 or 3 maybe, came in for our course. So we had a whole day where we just sat on the sofas drinking juice and eating biscuits and chatting. So that was really nice. We got to know each other quite well then, because like I said, we'd not really spoken before that. At the time we were both in different relationships with other people, so I specifically didn't really think much of it. I just thought of him as a friend. We'd say hi when we passed each other in the corridors, and you know, that was basically the gist of it. He was also working pretty much as whenever he wasn't at university, he was working, so he wasn't around a lot on the days when we didn't have classes. So like I said, we saw each other around, we would say hi, we'd have a chat every now and again, but it wasn't really anything more than just some friendly chatter, you know, very more like acquaintances, I guess, at university stage. Then he graduated, he left. He graduated in the year when I was living and working in Vancouver, so we sort of missed each other in that one whole year. So we sort of knew each other for a year at university. Then I went to Vancouver and he graduated, and so when I came back for my final year, he wasn't there, and like he'd already left. And then it got towards the end of my final year, and I'd broken up with my boyfriend at the time, ages before, and yeah, so what was it? It was around my finals exams, and he'd posted something on Facebook about an event he was going to, and he had a spare ticket. And I posted that, oh, you know, if I didn't have my exam on this day or whatever, if I wasn't revising for this exam, I'd totally take you up on that offer. Like completely just like friendly, nothing more than that. Anyway, I got a message from him afterwards being like, oh, well, if you want the ticket, I can get you one. Like someone else really claimed that ticket I had, but I can get you a ticket if you want to go. And I basically brushed him off. I blew him off. It didn't occur to me at the time, because this is like what I'm saying, like I really didn't think of him in that way at all up until then. I didn't realize until later, looking back on it, that he was essentially trying to ask me out in a very subtle way, and I just completely brushed it off. Anyway, a couple of weeks after that, he eventually asked me out, and I said yes. It was actually very, very sweet, but I won't go into the details. And yeah, and that's basically it. We started dating a few days after I did my last exam, and the rest has been history. We've been together for 9 years now. Be 10 years next year, which is crazy. Okay, my camera battery light is flashing, so hopefully I can finish these off really quickly. You've lived in several countries. Is there a particular place you'd like to settle down for a while? I think we've addressed that. New York, I'd love to stay there. What other places do you most want to visit in the world that you haven't been to yet? South America, hands down. I want to like take a year out of life and go travel around South America. You've probably answered this one already, but what made you start designing? Basically, I started designing because I was essentially already doing it without realizing. I was making such huge modifications to patterns already that I was essentially knitting my own designs, and that's kind of how I started. How did you pick your pattern writing style, layout, aesthetic? Again, I feel like that has evolved over time as well. That's not been something that I set out being like, this is how it's going to be. If you look at my old patterns and you look at my current patterns, you can see a huge difference in how that has evolved. And that's one of the things I would like to do at some point, is to go back and revamp my old designs to start looking more like how my current designs look in layout and aesthetic. All right, so before this camera dies, I'm going to sign out. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you all enjoy this video, and I look forward to hearing your opinions and your views on like the club ideas that I had. I really want to hear what you guys have to say. Leave me a comment down below on YouTube. You can send me an email. You can send me a message on Ravelry. I'll probably even open a forum for this, a thread in the forum on the Ravelry group as well, so you can ask me there as well. Let me know there as well. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope to chat to you guys again soon. Take care. Bye.